Welcome to HRP Clarity. Subscribe now and stay updated. Let's watch the video.
Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, It's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous.
What you just witnessed was one of the most explosive congressional hearings in recent memory. Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky didn't hold back as he grilled FBI Director Kash Patel about the Jeffrey Epstein case files. The tension in that room was palpable, wasn't it? Massie came prepared with documents, specific questions, and an obvious determination to get real answers. But did he succeed? That's what we're going to break down today. This wasn't just another routine hearing where politicians ask softball questions and accept vague responses. This was different. Massie challenged the official narrative directly, questioned the credibility of the FBI's investigation, and put Director Patel in an extremely uncomfortable position. Let's examine exactly what happened and what it means for the ongoing Epstein investigation.
Thomas Massie began by introducing 4 critical documents into the congressional record. These weren't random papers he pulled from the internet. Each document carried significant weight. The first referenced Alexander Acosta's stunning admission that he was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. Think about that for a moment. A former U.S. attorney essentially confirmed that intelligence agencies protected Epstein. The second document discussed Epstein's bodyguard warning about CIA connections. The third revealed Epstein's private calendar showing planned meetings with Obama administration officials and a CIA chief. The fourth highlighted former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Epstein. Do you see the pattern emerging here? Massie wasn't fishing for information. He was building a case, establishing a foundation for his questioning. This was strategic, calculated, and deliberate.
Director Patel's response to Senator Kennedy's question became the most important part of Massie's attack. Patel had stated there was no credible information that Epstein trafficked women to anyone else besides himself. Massie clearly found this statement problematic, and frankly, so should anyone paying attention. How could the FBI director claim there was no credible information when multiple victims had given detailed statements? Massie wasn't buying it, and he came prepared with specifics. He mentioned the Southern District of New York's investigation, the FD 302 documents, and the fact that victims had named approximately 20 men to whom Epstein trafficked them. Was Patel being truthful, or was he parsing words purely to avoid acknowledging what the FBI actually knows? What do you think?
The language Massie referenced was chilling in its specificity. A Hollywood producer worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a royal prince, someone prominent in the music industry, a high-profile banker, a former politician, an Italian car company owner, a rock star, a magician, at least 6 billionaires, including one from Canada. Massie made it clear he didn't know their exact identities, but the FBI does. These aren't conspiracy theories or internet rumors. These are documented statements from victims who cooperated with federal investigators. Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who tragically passed away, was among those victims who provided testimony. Massie even mentioned Jess Staley, the former CEO of Barclays Bank, by name. So when Director Patel says there's no credible information about trafficking to others, what exactly does he mean? Does he mean the victims aren't credible? Patel's defense was that 2 different U.S. attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations had reviewed these materials and found them insufficient for prosecution. But is that really an adequate answer? Massie pressed him directly. Have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them? Patel's response was revealing. He admitted he personally hadn't reviewed them, but the FBI has. In my opinion, that's a concerning admission from someone who just became FBI director. How can you make definitive statements about what evidence exists if you haven't personally reviewed the most critical documents in the case? Do you think that was the right thing to say? The American people deserve better than secondhand assurances about such a significant investigation. The exchange became even more heated when Massie challenged Patel's Senate testimony. How can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names? Massie demanded. Patel's response attempted to draw a distinction between not releasing victim names and not releasing incredible information. But that wasn't what Massie was asking about. He was asking about perpetrator names, not victim names. This felt like deflection, didn't it? Patel stated that the Department of Justice and FBI aren't in the practice of releasing victims' names or incredible information. But again, nobody was asking him to release victim names. They were asking about the men who allegedly committed crimes. That's a crucial difference, and Patel seemed deliberately to conflate the two issues. Was that intentional misdirection? Massie then shifted to another controversial topic, the public release of Epstein documents. He questioned whether Patel was present when the Attorney General held a White House event releasing binders to social media influencers. Patel confirmed he was there. Massie's follow-up question was pointed. If you're willing to meet with social media influencers who benefit from these sensational stories, will you meet with the actual victims? Patel's response was that the FDI will meet with anyone who has information, but he notably avoided committing to personally meeting with victims. That was a strong response from Massie, wasn't it? He exposed what appears to be a priority problem. The FBI leadership has time for social media personalities, but apparently not for the people who suffered the actual abuse. Do you agree that's problematic? The language release raised additional questions. Massie noted that documents were released to the Oversight Committee on the same day he introduced a discharge petition to force their release. He asked if Patel was instructed to release them that day specifically. Patel claimed he didn't know what day the discharge petition was introduced. But here's where things got worse. The rushed release resulted in victim names not being properly redacted. These victims, who have already suffered tremendously, had their names exposed publicly because of sloppy work. Massie stated clearly that the victims are not happy about that. And why would they be? This is exactly the kind of institutional failure that erodes public trust. In my opinion, that's unacceptable from the nation's premier law enforcement agency. Massie then addressed the elephant in the room, CIA connections. He asked if Patel had investigated any CIA connections to Epstein and whether he'd seen the CIA file on Epstein. Patel's response was carefully worded. He said he could only speak for the FBI and was presuming there's a CIA case file. He claimed the FBI had reviewed everything the interagency provided to them. Notice the qualifier there. Everything that was provided to them. That doesn't mean they've seen everything that exists. When Massie asked if he'd be willing to look at the CIA file, Patel said the FBI would look at any new investigative leads if there is such a file. Do you find that response satisfactory? It certainly seemed like Patel was leaving himself significant wiggle room. In the final moments, Massie asked about two other controversial investigations, the January 6th pipe bomb and the Las Vegas shooter's motive. Patel said the pipe bomb investigation is ongoing and they've made progress, but offered nothing specific. Regarding the Las Vegas shooter's motive, he simply said he'd have to get back to Massie. These brief exchanges highlighted a broader pattern throughout the hearing. When pressed for specifics, Patel consistently fell back on vague assurances or promises to follow up later. That's a classic bureaucratic technique for avoiding accountability. This hearing revealed fundamental questions about the FBI's handling of the Epstein case. Thomas Massie came prepared with specific documents, specific questions, and specific allegations from victims. Director Patel, despite being the head of the FBI, repeatedly claimed he hadn't personally reviewed critical evidence, couldn't provide specific answers, and seemed to parse language very carefully to avoid making definitive statements. The American people deserve to know the truth about Jeffrey Epstein's network. They deserve to know if powerful individuals were protected. They deserve to know if intelligence agencies interfered with justice. What do you think about everything we've discussed today? Was Massie's questioning fair? Were Patel's answers adequate? The Epstein case remains one of the most troubling unresolved scandals in recent American history, and this hearing suggests we're nowhere near getting complete answers.